Live again. Plug the earphones in, plugged in, turned on, and ready to go. Got the real estate show midweek report going on today. So stand by. I got the intro going in right now, and then we'll be going right into it. How do you like today's quote? And hello, South Florida. Welcome to another live edition of the Real Estate Show, South Florida's #1 program about real estate, America's longest running program about real estate, and coming you today live Wednesday, January 6th, a very key day in history and a very important day politically, obviously. And the name of the game here today, obviously, is what's going on in Washington. And if you have been disconnected and head down to the grindstone, then maybe you've missed this. But if you haven't, and I'm sure you've heard that there's just a lot of commotion going on in Washington. So we got a great show for you today. I promised you that it was going to be an exciting day in the midweek report, and I'm going to deliver. And with obviously a lot of help from all the folks out there, particularly in Washington, who descended on the Capitol today, the day that they're supposed to certify the electoral votes and do the count. The runoff for the Georgia Senate also, it happened yesterday, and we're just getting the results today. And well, let's just dive right into it. But first, let me go a couple of quick announcements, and then I'll get into it. First of all, just want to remind all of our listeners here, wherever you're listening to us from, we are live on 1470, the AM station here in South Florida, known as Money Talk Radio. It's WWNN Money Talk Radio. If you want to search first, you can find us on iHeartRadio, the TuneIn app, the Spreaker app, and probably a whole bunch of other free apps that are out there that allow you to tune into the radio on your smart device. We're here on AM 1470, and on the FM dial, we're at 106.9, moving down the dial to 96.9, moving further down the dial to 95.3. And you can always catch us live on our website at automaticlandlord.com. That's automaticlandlord.com, where you can listen to us live streaming at our Live at 5 edition every weekday afternoon, Monday through Friday. And that's Eastern Standard Time. You can catch us again at 8 p.m. on the 8 p.m. show. And you can also come to one of our free workshops. We go deeper and a little bit more detailed into some of the subjects, like our Equity Accelerator workshop, which is coming up this coming Monday. If you want to attend that workshop, just type in the word equity to get your free link. It'll be sent to you automatically. Simply type in the phone number, save it, write it down, tattoo it, plug it, program it into your phone, 561-861-2366. Now save that number for a bunch of other keywords I'm going to give you. Equity is the first one. Credit is the second one if you want to come to our credit workshop. Now, if you want to accelerate your credit, you want to create your credit, you want to fix your credit, or you just want to be on top of some of the opportunities using credit, then come to our Credit Accelerator workshop on Tuesday, and now coming up on Wednesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So it's going to be in between our two shows. We're doing that workshop. It's less than an hour. It's about a 45-minute introduction, and then we can talk more from there. But if you want to go to either our Wednesday, Thursday edition of the credit workshop, again, that's credit, texted to 561-861-2366. And Sunday, don't forget, coming up, our Real Estate 101 workshop. If you want to come to our Real Estate 101 workshop, get all the details, then type in the numbers 101 to that same number, the 561-861-2366 number. And for those of you, a number of you took us up on our opportunity yesterday when we were talking about the value of a sounding board, a discovery conversation with yours truly. Type in the word discovery to 561-861-2366 for your free, no cost, no obligation, complimentary conversation with me about real estate and find out whether real estate investing is right for you. So we are going to now jump into our midweek report. And just let me tell you that it's been kind of a fun thing. I didn't have to go very far to come up with the topics that we have here. By the way, I want to also mention, in fact, I want to actually ask all of you to help me out here. We are at 9,946 followers on our new Facebook page. Then that's facebook.com/The Real Estate Show. We're a little bit more than 50 followers away from breaking the 10,000 mark. And so I want to ask those of you, if you're listening to this show and you haven't followed The Real Estate Show, it's different than like, it's follow, because then you get the alerts of when our show comes on. You get all of the updates and the messages on there. So you need to follow our Facebook page. Again, facebook.com, or if you already have a Facebook page, it's The Real Estate Show, just like I have right above me. And then make sure that you click the follow button. Tell your friends to click the follow button. Let's see if we can't break that number before the end of the week, is what I'd like to do. Anyway, speaking about our Facebook page, I want to say hi to Marianne from the West Coast of Florida, Cindy from the West Coast in California, Ileana from Brazil, my Ileana, and Mario right here in South Florida as well. And Mario was just asking, does the DC strife, and right now what we're seeing is that, literally the protesters of the certification of President Joe Biden, or President-elect Joe Biden, as the new president, they were attempted to interrupt and stop that count so that their protest could be heard. Now, I'm all about a peaceful protest, but I'm not about something when it turns violent or destructive. So, and that's what happened today. Unfortunately, they broke down the barriers and literally invaded, went inside the nation's capital. And I think there's a couple of things that it says here. Obviously, number one, I think the kettle is a little too hot right now, and people need to kind of cool it down a little bit. Number one, peaceful protests, and I love the numbers. I love seeing them out there, and I love when you have a message. Everybody deserves to be heard, but nobody deserves to get hurt in the process. So Mario's asking me if the DC strife is going to bring down property prices, and the answer to that is no. Just because there's a protest in a particular area, the effect of that is usually fairly short term. What's more important is, and probably our next topic here, is the runoffs, the Georgia runoffs. And as you may already have heard, the Senate, which was Republican controlled, now has gone from red to blue. And both of the runoff candidates from the Democratic Party were the winners there. And therefore, so that presents a very interesting picture moving forward. And what that means now, the House of Representatives, which was already democratically in control, the Senate, which was controlled by the Republicans, and of course a Republican president. So you had, the houses were split. And so any bill or any law had to get through that conversation before it even makes it to the president. And of course, the president has to send his things down. That's what our whole checks and balances, which is all about. And it's nice to have that balance of power in there. Now, we have a situation where the new president-elect is Democratic. The House of Representatives remains Democratic, although they lost some seats, so it's not as completely controlled. Then you have the Senate, which went from red to blue, from Republican to Democratic, and so now you've got all three of those groups, let's just call them, that are now in the blue column. And so what that does is it paves the way, or it doesn't slow down the more progressive agenda, because they've got the votes to override what is now the minority, the Republican vote. Now, we're going to see what Wall Street thinks about this in the next couple of days, because Wall Street liked the balance, and so it wasn't upset whether the president was Republican or Democratic, but it will, in my opinion, we'll see in the next couple of days. We're going to see what they really feel, because now that the president-elect has the House and the Senate in his corner, he'll be able to increase the taxes like he promised as one of his campaign promises. There's a number of things that are going to be done that are going to drive up the cost. Obviously, the Democratic Party was much more in favor in bigger relief packages. Now, none of this comes without a cost, right? A benefit today could come with a very long-term and expensive cost going forward. So, will that impact property prices? I think so. And so we're going to see that, how that's going to impact, or how fast. Now, short term, what I'm reading and hearing is that there's a lot of conversation. In fact, in the second part of the program, I want to spend a little bit of time and talk about what a Democratic-controlled Congress could mean for struggling renters, struggling landlords, and real estate owners in general. So that is probably the more elusive question. Will the uprisings, the same way we had the protesters back during some of the shootings? Of course, I think short term, yes, it's going to very negatively affect those hotbed areas, particularly some of the deep blue states and areas like New York City, which was absolutely hammered by the protests. And you saw what happened to the state as a whole, that there was a huge out-migration, partially because of, I would say even quite a bit because of the coronavirus and the desire to have more distance in between people. But then when you add in the liberal policies, the much looser law enforcement, in fact, what happened today in Capitol Hill, I think, is a direct collateral damage from those protests, because now police that normally should be a little bit more forceful when it comes to these kinds of protests that get out of hand, they need to have the authority to be able to quell that and go back to what the with the style of, and whenever you have the kind of numbers that you had descending in Washington, you're going to get people that are just going to get caught up in the momentum, in the excitement, in the adrenaline, and they're going to do things that probably a lot of them wouldn't do either by themselves or in their normal state of mind. So whenever you have these big groups that are in a heated something that they strongly believe in, it can get out of hand and get ugly very quickly. But now let's talk a little bit about the issue of what that will do to the renters and so forth. Just a couple of quick headlines. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Let's do this. First of all, home building stocks, as a result, right now are not as strong as they once were. Remember, that was an optimism, because we saw what would look like it would be a very stable, steady, and even keeled economy going forward, and perhaps even the optimism towards a growing economy. Now, what has put a cold splash of water on that is, number one, we're now going into lockdown 3.0, as I've heard it called. The coronavirus surge is surging on the surge that was surging. And so we've got that issue. We got the vaccine that was bringing in a lot of optimism. And now with these variant strains, and now I saw some conversation that some of these variant strains are not even affected or addressed by the vaccine. So, great question. Are we going to have a vaccine that does work, or are we going to have all these new variants that keep popping up, and it's kind of like a giant game of whack-a-mole? You solve this strain, and then another resistant strain pops up over there, and then you get that one, another one pops up over here. That would not bode well for the economy as a whole. It would make the getting back on track and a recovery more difficult. And ultimately, if you have, it all goes back to the income. Income goes down, so will the prices go down because of the sustainability of housing. And we know we have a shortage of housing, as I told you before, that all other things being equal, the prognosis for real estate is actually quite strong. The demand for real estate is actually quite strong. And what we need is for employment to get back on track and to stay well. So we're going to address that a little bit. So home buyers have stepped back a little bit as prices have risen. So it's an affordability issue there. We saw the new home construction slow down. We saw the pending home sales slow down a little bit. And we now are watching the mortgage numbers, mortgage demand from home buyers pulled back in the most recent month, which of course could be a sign, A, of affordability, and B, of the uncertainty going forward. Anyway, I got a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk about the implication of the Democratic-controlled Congress. So stay tuned. We're going to go take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive deep. We'll go hard into that subject. You're listening to The Real Estate Show. Our midweek report is hot, and it is going to be back. So don't touch that dial. I'll see you in a minute. So if they open 2 new states, which would be converting D.C. from the District of Columbia into a state, Puerto Rico has voted that down 2 times already before. So I don't know if that's very imminent on the plate right now. Not sure how you're saying you've got the definitely the majority, or now you're talking about the super majority. I don't know how adding the states will impact things so much, but yeah, to grow the Supreme Court size. I don't know whether that they have purposely been quiet, or whether the moderate side, even of the Democratic Party, kind of said, listen, some of those ideas are a little bit too far-fetched even for us. And so I've seen everything from the appointees to the latest chatter about what the programs are to be fairly middle of the road. So I'm not too crazy scared about the progressives, at least not right now. But I am more concerned, and you're going to see, I'm much more concerned about what we're going to do about this backlog of rents owned. We're going to get ready to come back, and maybe I'll answer some of that question with this conversation also. And welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to The Real Estate Show, our midweek report in full swing here. My name is Eric Willner, and you're listening to South Florida's #1 program about real estate, America's longest running daily radio show about real estate. And really an exciting day here in the news. It's a great day to be having a midweek report, especially, with the runoffs now. And I don't know whether they've actually been certified, but it's pretty clear what's going to happen. The 2 Democratic finalists did beat the Republicans in the runoff, and so now we are faced with the situation that if we have a Democratic-controlled Congress, both in the House and in the Senate, what that could mean for renters struggling amid the pandemic, and ultimately what that means for the landlords in the pandemic. And now let me just throw a little bit of an idea out there. If the right assistance isn't provided for both sides of that equation, because there's really two sides of a coin, but they're still the same coin. Don't forget, you've got the renters on the one side, and so there's a lot of talk about more rental assistance, and particularly on the Democratic side of things, a more generous rental assistance. In fact, as crazy as this may sound at the onset, that they're talking about funding for legal counsel to protect tenants. In other words, provide more counsel to the tenants who aren't paying the landlords. Now, if they're willing to back that with money so that the tenants can pay the just amount of rent. Remember, this is a contract that was signed between a landlord and a tenant. Again, same side, same coin, different sides of the equation. If the politicians in Washington that I often do not think that they're really in touch with what goes on with the average and the majority of landlords out there are really mom and pop landlords. They own maybe one property, maybe two or three if they're a little bit more advanced. But how many people do you know in terms of, think about it in terms of the big quantity? How many people do you know that own more than, say, 10 properties? It's not a lot of landlords out there that do. And I'm not talking about big apartment building owners, because that's not your mom and pop landlord. Most mom and pop landlords, which are the majority of landlords, there's a concentration of units by a large number of large landlords, but the majority of the units nationwide are held by mom and pop landlords who depend many times, or most of the time, for the tenants to pay them so they can pay the bank for the mortgage. And if you only help the tenants and don't make sure that that money lands in the hands of the landlords, you're going to have two things. Number one is that you're going to have landlords and investors as a whole be very suspect of entering into a contract. Now, in my conversations with a number of landlords over the last several days and weeks, I will tell you that there is one common sentiment is that if I have a unit vacant, I'm very leery about putting a new tenant in there that shows any signs of financial weakness, which, by the way, then hurts the very people that need the low and affordable housing the most. So that inventory will dry up and then become a responsibility, again, of the government. If you don't have landlords that are either fatigued from having spent up to 10 months now, going on 11 months of no rent received, and I'm hearing talk now of extending the moratorium significantly. We're already out at least until February 27th. You can take that as a given. Pretty much everything has been put on hold for the month of January. We're now a week into January, so January from a moratorium perspective is off the table. It's done, it's passed. And from my perspective, I'll tell you that so is February. The question is, can we get back to some sort of a normal, unartificially sustained market before March? It's sounding kind of questionable. And that's why if Democrats win both seats in Georgia, which looks like they will, renters struggling amid the pandemic could see more relief measures, which, like I said, it's good as long as it flows to both sides of the coin. Democrats have supported and have expressed support for a 12-month eviction ban and passing tens of millions of dollars more in rental assistance. Now, I hope when I read this that this was a typo, because when they say passing tens of millions of dollars more in rental assistance, if you'll recall the other day, the estimate of back or unpaid rent is now tallying somewhere close to 70, not million, billion. The most recent relief provided $25 billion towards the $70 billion. And so tens of millions of dollars ain't going to do it. And it's got to be done in a way, like I said, that if you don't fix the problem with the renters, who can't fix the problems with the tenants or the landlords, and then the landlords can't fix the problems with the banks, you're going to have a triple problem, and you're going to have landlords which will either leave the business or only rent to the best of the best. You'll have to qualify for a rental property, even more difficult than it is to qualify for a mortgage, because there's better protections for the mortgage companies than there are for the landlord. And we've talked about that in the past. We'll talk more about that in some of the follow-ups as we get more specific details on that. But the second thing is that'll happen is that the lending will dry up towards investment properties because of that very thing as well. Again, hurting the people that least should be hurt or needed this the most. So anyway, that brings us up to date. Meanwhile, as the Senator Vice President Kamala Harris introduced legislation that would prohibit evictions and foreclosures, as well as help renters facing eviction get legal counsel against the very people that helped them, the landlords. So that's it. We're out of time for our midweek report. We're certainly going to be talking a lot more about this in the days and weeks to come, as this thing is far, far, far from over. Anyway, tune in here every single day, Monday through Friday, here for the Real Estate Show. We'll be keeping you up to date and on the front edge of what's going on. We'll also help you out with what to do if you already are a real estate owner, and especially if you're a real estate investor. So this is Eric Willner signing off for today's edition of the Real Estate Show. Until tomorrow, drive safe, wash those hands, and make it a great day. Bye-bye. Boom. Thank you. Go ahead and hang that up. I'm going to go ahead and drop in on our live stream there. Hey, Brian. Got that one up. And